Hi, guys. Hello. If you are listening on the She's All Batch podcast feed, hi. This is just me, Jackie, and you are in for a little solo episode. And if you are watching on YouTube, hello. I'm Jackie from She's All Batch podcast. I've been kind of dabbling with doing some YouTube videos, and today I'm going to be talking about my review of Wicked for Good. I just saw it last night. So yeah, if you guys are listening on the podcast, definitely go check out the video on YouTube. If you're on the video, hi. It's kind of hard to play to both audiences here because I'm trying to talk to the audio people and wave to the video people. But yeah, plugging both. And if you're finding me here on YouTube, definitely go check out She's All Batch podcast. Me and my co-host Stephanie talk about Bachelor, but also just reality TV, pop culture, ourselves. It's a good time. So I saw Wicked for Good last night, and I really debated recording this yesterday right when I got home, but it was late, I was tired, and I wanted to take a minute to really let my thoughts and feelings about the movie sink in. So it is now the next day. It's Friday afternoon, and I feel like I finally can look at this movie with a bit of distance from the experience and explain how I felt about it more truthfully, because I'm going to be honest. It was a good movie, right? I did thoroughly enjoy it, but I did leave the theater feeling a little bit underwhelmed. And I don't know if that's because my expectations for the movie were just so high. I thought part one was a near perfect adaptation. And so maybe I was just putting really impossible standards on part two, especially knowing that Wicked for Good part two obviously is based off of Act 2 of the Broadway musical. And Act 2 of the Broadway musical is a little bit more rushed. And I knew they were going to have to expand on a lot of things and add more to the story. And so in that sense, right, Act 1 translated to movie is going to kind of be what everyone's expectations are because there's not much they really needed to add to the story, versus this, it was acknowledged that things were going to have to be expanded upon and added to the story to make a 45-minute Act 2 into a 2-hour movie. And when that's the case, right, I have an idea of how I would want the story expanded and the things that I would want them to explore more of. But my one opinion is not necessarily what the people working on the movie are going to think that they should expand upon, right? When it's open-ended like that, maybe there is just more room for people to be disappointed because they're projecting what they would have wanted onto the movie. Yeah, I'm not sure. Or it could just be that Act 2 does not end on a happy, powerful, inspiring note, right? It's incredibly sad. It's solemn at the end of the movie versus, you leave the first movie. It ends with Defying Gravity, one of the most iconic moments in Broadway history, translated to the screen, one of the most incredible songs for theater and show tunes ever written. And so, obviously you're going to leave part one on a high. So I was a little bummed that I didn't leave part two on as much of a high, but let's get into it. Let's really just discuss all of my feelings. I have a little note here that I was writing things down as I was leaving the theater, and once I got back home and was in bed, just kind of reminiscing. Let's start with the good things though. First off, the performances by Cynthia and Ariana. Oh my God, these women are incredible. I wish they could both win the Oscar for these performances. Really just so good. Cynthia's No Good Deed was absolutely breathtaking. I have chills just thinking about it. That was definitely for me the highlight of this entire film. And Ariana, I was really just so impressed with her acting, right? I think in Act 2, Glinda goes through much more of a transformation and has much more of a full circle arc. And Ariana, and I've said this before when I've talked about Wicked, Ariana Grande understands the character of Glinda more than I think sometimes most women who have played the role on Broadway understand the character of Glinda and all of the layers and nuance that Glinda has, because I think sometimes, especially in the show version, Glinda can sometimes be overlooked as just this kooky comedic relief, when I think there's so much more depth to her. And Ariana understands that. I felt that way after the first movie, and I still feel that way after the second movie. The arc that Ariana goes through and the acting, really, really phenomenal. But I don't want to only just, praise Ariana, because Cynthia oh my freaking God. Like the vocals on that woman, the power behind her voice. When I talked about the first movie, I really complimented Cynthia's take on Elphaba because I think she really found such a vulnerable softness in her. I think sometimes in the Broadway show, it's really easy for Elphaba, especially in Act 1 and a little bit in Act 2, to just become very hardened. Like in those beginning scenes at Shiz, she's very like defensive and used to it. And, you know, in the Broadway show when she's like, all right, let's get this over with. Yes, I've always been green, blah, 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 blah. And the way Cynthia delivers those lines is so calm and sure of herself, but at the same time, so softly accepting like the disappointment that the world has thrust upon her. So I've always loved Cynthia's interpretation of Elphaba, and that just continued into part 2. Both of those women really like phenomenal performances. Honestly, all the performances besides Michelle Yeoh, no offense, were great. Ethan Slater really blew me away with his moments as Bach/Tin Man. Oh, also, I guess I should say this. I'll put this in the title so that there is no confusion. Obviously, guys, spoiler alert for the almost 100-year-old story of The Wizard of Oz. Spoiler alert for the 1939 movie. Spoiler alert for Wicked on Broadway. Spoiler alert for Wicked for Good and Wicked the first one. If you haven't seen these things and you're watching this video and you think you're not going to be spoiled, I don't know what to tell you. Now, getting into some of just like my general thoughts coming away from the film. So before I saw it, there were a couple people I spoke to who were able to see early screenings of the film. And the feedback from everyone was kind of the same, that it's a really good movie. It's not as good as the first one, but a lot of the things that the second movie lacks is really due to the weaker source material of Act 2. Like the people I was talking to were of the opinion that Act 2 of Wicked is not as good as Act 1. And so they were kind of like, you know, so they did the best that they could do with what they were given. And I think maybe my mistake was hearing that I didn't quite fully absorb what they were saying, because I am someone who actually loves Act 2 of Wicked. I think some of the best songs are in Act 2, and I really love how we finally see everything come together and how things then get intertwined with The Wizard of Oz. Like, I really like seeing all the pieces fall into place. I love Act 2. Anytime I watch the Broadway show, I'm always so bummed that Act 2 is as short as it is, because I'm like vibing, like listening to all the little songs, you know, hit after hit after hit, As Long As You're Mine, No Good Deed, March of the Witch Hunters. And then I'm always so disappointed by the time it's over. I'm like, oh, I wish Act 2 would be expanded to be much longer. So when I heard that this movie is going to be a longer version of Act 2, I was excited, because I'm like, yes, I love Act 2. And I could see then how someone who had a different perspective on Act 2 would maybe not like it as much. So I thought I was going to go into it like really, really loving it. I think though what I realized through this film is maybe the reason why Act 2 does work, in my opinion, is because of the pacing, because it is so quick. It really is like one thing after the next, particularly the I'm Not That Girl reprise, right into As Long As You're Mine, into the scene after the house falls, into No Good Deed, directly into March of the Witch Hunters, and then directly into For Good. Like, it's just boom, 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 banger, 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 banger. And I think with this, because they needed to stretch it out to fill a 2-hour long movie, but also do what they did in the first film and, you know, take what we have from the Broadway show and kind of unzip it and expand the world and give us more layers, I felt that caused the pacing to be slow at times, particularly in the first half of the movie. And so I would describe parts of it as slow, because it's not hit after hit after hit after hit. We have these moments of transition in between, particularly with As Long As You're Mine. That's a song that I really love from the Broadway show that I was really, really excited for. I mean, how could you not be? Like, Cynthia Erivo, amazing. Jonathan Bailey, sexiest man alive, amazing. They're both incredible vocalists. I think it's a really powerful and beautiful song. And that was the one number that kind of really fell flat for me, because I think there are other parts of Act 2, like Wonderful, for example, or the Wicked Witch of the East song, that they're good songs, but my expectations for them were lower because I just know compared to like a No Good Deed, they're not going to hold up. But As Long As You're Mine, I felt really has the power to hold up to some of those songs that I really, really love from Act Two. And the way they did this one, how it didn't transition directly from I'm Not That Girl reprise into As Long As You're Mine. We had some time. And then even like the way it was orchestrated, I felt had less of like a rhythm under it. And combine that with the fact that I understand that it is a PG movie. They're not going to give us like porn on Wicked for Good for As Long As You're Mine. But I feel like it could have been a little bit like more passionate, a little bit sexier, a little bit more build up. So the combination of those two things with like the different orchestration that I felt was like a little bit slower, and the fact that for most of the time when they're singing this, like they're not even really together. They're kind of like prepping to be together. Like Cynthia's putting on her little robe and they're kind of singing. Like I feel like they should be singing this song the entire time, like face to face, singing powerfully and passionately to each other. That was the one song that I felt I had really high expectations for that I thought could have landed better. But otherwise, No Good Deed, chills, absolutely breathtaking, one of the most iconic performances I've ever seen. And then, I think with some of the other things, they did really the best they could with Wonderful. I mean, Thank Goodness really hit. I think Ariana did a really great job. I liked that they really fleshed out the political tones of this show and that we got to see Elphaba, in the beginning flying around, doing good, helping the animals, and really get a sense of what this world has looked like for the past few years in between Defying Gravity and the opening of the second movie, where we don't know really what has gone on. And I think they really did a good job of building out the world and understanding what the dynamics are. I think it was really cool to see the opportunities where Madame Morrible would twist the narrative, or, Glinda would say Elphaba, Morrible would correct her and be like, no, you mean the Wicked Witch. Same thing with the cloud scene when Elphaba writes in the sky and Morrible twists it and is like, look, guys, she wants to kill us. Oh, my God. I think seeing all those different elements of propaganda was really interesting. And I love the political undertones of Wicked, and that was explored more. I enjoyed it. The original songs, I hate to say it, I don't think we needed them. They didn't really add anything to me. I think someone else I saw put it better, that while I understand what those original songs were trying to portray as far as like character development and storytelling moments, I really do feel like those feelings and thoughts could have been covered adequately in the same way without a whole entire new song. And I just don't feel that those two songs feel wickedy to me. Like, it's very clear that Stephen Schwartz wrote them several years after he wrote the other music. And maybe I'll feel differently the more I listen to them and more just like accept them now as part of this work. Because, right, I'm so familiar with everything else, and this is just you're plopping two new things there that maybe in time I'll feel differently. But they just felt like they don't fit and was kind of unnecessary to me. I think another thing, too, that caused me to be slightly overwhelmed is I think that some of these scenes and things are just more impressive when you see them on the stage. For example, one of my favorite moments in the Broadway show is when Bach transitions into the Tin Man, right? Like, seeing that on stage, when people first saw that on Broadway, they would applaud after the transition, right? Like, it kind of blows your mind. I mean, I know the secret of how they do that so quickly, but if you don't know, and it really does appear like magic. It's a really cool illusion to see on stage. And for that reason, that's one of my like favorite scenes in the show. But when you're working in a movie setting where, people are flying around left and right, you have more like visual freedom. Like, something like that doesn't hit in the same way that it does on stage. It's less impressive because we're so used to seeing special effects and transitions like that in a movie. And so there were a couple scenes there in the beginning that I felt were more underwhelming for that reason. And then the last thing I'll say to complain about it before I get back into the good is that I think for me, when I heard that we're getting an expanded aspect of Act 2 of the movie. I had hoped that maybe they would explore some of the plot holes and things that still remain unclear or unanswered from the Broadway show. I think that's a big criticism of Act 2 in the musical, is that like they have a lot to fit in to a really short amount of time, and it feels a little bit rushed and a little bit thrown together, and there's still some questions and plot holes at the end. And I would have loved if they would have taken some time to flesh those out, because especially someone who loves The Wizard of Oz, like I want this all to fit together. Like I want it to work so that both things can be like canon. I know a lot of people on the internet are just kind of like, separate the work. Like this is fan fiction. It's not supposed to like directly work, but I want it to work. And I do think there's a way, if you spent a little bit more time exploring a few little instances that don't really make sense to me when I look at the original Wizard of Oz film compared to like knowing the canon and story of Wicked, that I just would have been, as like a super fan, really happy if they had looked into that. Like, for example, something that always has never quite sat right with me is kind of like the relationship that we see between the witch and the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. And it's like, okay, if that's Fiyero, how does this work? Like, what is unclear to me, I'm like, does Elphaba know that Fiyero is the scarecrow or suspects that he's the scarecrow at any point in time? One specific moment in The Wizard of Oz that I have never really been able to grapple with is that, like, okay, you know, when Dorothy finally meets the Tin Man before they meet the lion, the witch shows up and is just kind of, you know, harassing them a little bit, and she throws balls of fire at the scarecrow. They have like an interaction. What's up with that? Why does the scarecrow then follow along with Dorothy, the Tin Man, and the Lion? Like, we see the Tin Man and the Lion and Dorothy in this movie in March of the Witch Hunters. Where is the scarecrow then? Why is he allowing them to continue this whole like mob thing if this is Fiyero trying to protect Elphaba? What I have come to the conclusion of as like a super fan who has thought way too much of this is, here's like how I like to read it. I think that when Fiyero was transformed into the scarecrow, he got some sort of like amnesia or forgot some things, in the same way that people like who are through really bad like physical trauma, like if you get into like a horrible car accident, sometimes people get amnesia, or like they don't quite remember what happened right leading up to the accident. So I kind of have the theory that when Fiyero was going through that transformation, like it was so traumatic and like trauma to his body that he kind of forgot things, which would then go connect to the fact that like the scarecrow says he doesn't have a brain. Like he doesn't know who he is or how he got there. So he sees this girl who comes to like see him, and he's like, wait, who are you? Oh, you're going to see the wizard? Like, okay, cool. I don't know who the heck I am or how I got here. So yeah, maybe the wizard can help me out. And then over time, as he continues, like maybe even when he has that interaction with Elphaba, when he's there with the Tin Man, is when like little things start coming back to him. And then by the time they get to the Emerald City and he realizes that he and Dorothy and friends are all being set out to kill Elphaba, is when he like fully kind of realizes what's happening. And then that's when he puts the plan in motion to try to protect her, and then sends that note to her that like, hey, go through the trap door, I'll come get you, we'll escape together. So by the time they're sent off to the witch, then he's like full Fiyero, he remembers things. That's always kind of how I interpreted it and how I've kind of like been able to grapple with it. For example, if you realize in the movie, in the Wizard of Oz movie, the reason why Elphaba gets the water thrown on her is because she goes, hey, how about a little fire, scarecrow? She lights him on fire. Then Dorothy, not realizing that water would even melt the witch, grabs the bucket of water and throws it on the scarecrow, which then hits Elphaba and then she melts. So you could kind of interpret that as like that was part of their plan, right? It was like, okay, I'm gonna have them throw water on me and fake my death and melt. So in order to get that bucket of water thrown, she needs to get the fire out, and she knows the fire can't hurt Fiyero, so they kind of have a little role play going on. That's kind of always how I've made sense of it, but I think it would have been really cool to see the movie explore that and maybe see us get some scenes in between there from when Fiyero meets Dorothy to when he is with the witch and she's getting melted, to kind of see how this elaborate plan comes into place. Because we don't know, like, we don't even know what Fiyero wrote to her on that little note that causes her to decide, okay, now's the time I'm going to surrender. I'm going to fake my death. Another one too that's always kind of confused me is that Glinda knows that the water rumor is a lie. She knows that Elphaba can get wet and that water is not going to kill her. So like, why does Glinda believe that Elphaba is truly dead? That's, I think, another little plot hole. But once again, I've spent time with this and thought about this a lot myself. I wish they had thought about it, the people writing and making the movie. The way I've kind of now rationed it is, and this kind of works with how they did it in the movie, although it's not explicitly stated, and I'm not quite sure, because Glinda still does see the water be thrown on Elphaba, but because Glinda's in the closet and can't really see what's going on, maybe she doesn't understand that it was just like water thrown on her, Elphaba melting, because she can't fully see. Maybe she thinks that like they did other things to her to kill her. That's also kind of how I've grappled with that plot hole. But once again, I think that could have been a cool thing to explore. But I understand that maybe I am the minority of people who has just like overthought this story way too much. And if they were to have done that, right, then they're really almost writing an entirely new story and adding on to this story, as opposed to just being faithful to what the Broadway show is. So I guess in that sense, I do understand why it was maybe the smarter decision to not do that. Like, that's an entirely different movie, right? Like, that's an entirely different other fan fiction interpretation version of this world. That's not Wicked for Good Act 2 of the musical interpreted into movie form. Because Wicked for Good really is beat for beat Act 2 just expanded upon. And so I understand why maybe they felt it wasn't appropriate to like rewrite parts of the plot that I had never personally sat well with. But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy this movie. I think I'm going to actually maybe go see it again tonight and see if I have different feelings about it, because just seeing it for the first time with so much buildup and so much of an idea in my head of how it was going to be, especially given the fact that I feel like, one, we saw so much of this movie before it came out from previews and sneak peeks and clips. And then in the days leading up to me finally seeing the movie, so many little scenes were posted already on TikTok. And I tried my best to scroll away and not really see anything. But, you know, part of it is inevitable. So I felt like I really had seen a lot of this movie before I had actually sat down to watch it. And therefore it kind of warps what I thought it was going to be. And so then naturally, once you sit down and finally experience it, it's a lot to take in, like what was kind of how you thought it was going to be, what was totally different that I totally didn't read correctly from the clips that I saw. And so I think I do need another watch to fully interpret it and digest it. And I think the second time around, I'm going to like it more. Don't get me wrong, guys. I don't want this to be like me bashing it. I did really like it. There are some really beautiful, beautiful moments in this movie. I think like from No Good Deed on, really stunning. Like the scenes between Elphaba and Glinda in For Good, that split screen scene when they say I love you to each other and they close the door and Ariana's in the closet and then they both break down crying once the door is shut between both of them. I really do think they did a beautiful job of wrapping this up. I liked once the melting had occurred and Glinda is now going back to the Emerald City to get rid of the wizard and Madame Morrible. I liked the little bit of expanded moments in those places. The ending, really stunning, her going back to the tower where Defying Gravity happened. Like, there really is such beautiful emotional moments in this film. And I don't want some of my like personal gripes with like the plot of Act 2 of Wicked to cause people to overlook a lot of good there. So I'm going to see it again tonight. So maybe I'll have totally different feelings come next week. These are just kind of my first impressions after seeing it for the first time after so much buildup, after so much anticipation. Let me know what you guys think. Sound off in the comments below. What did you think of Wicked for Good? I would love to know. Like and subscribe. Make sure you follow my channel. Hit the little bell so that you don't miss any of my future episodes that I put out. In a few days from now, I'm also going to put out a vlog of me and my friends going to the theater and seeing it, and really like initial reactions after we saw the show, the build up to the show, what we think is going to happen. I think it's a fun watch. I also, in that vlog, sit down in the beginning to kind of set the scene and talk a little bit about like my history with the story of Wicked and the Wizard of Oz and why it means so much to me. And so check that out, because it might give you some more context of why I have like the opinions that I have in this episode. But yeah, and if you guys are listening audio only on She's All Batch, thank you so much. Check out those YouTube videos if you want to, but also if you are just a tried and true She's All Batch girly who doesn't need any additional Wicked or additional Jackie content, by all means, live your life. So yeah, is that it? I think that's it. Bye, bitches.